This is Chris Shandek, and you're on CYInterview.com, where we have brought you over 1,000 of the biggest and brightest names in news, sports, and entertainment. With the world mourning the death of Michael Jackson, many views, stories, and perspectives are coming out on the King of Pop's life. Former Sony executives and two of music's biggest players have a different perspective than the media is telling. Chris Apostle and songwriter-producer Corey Rooney discuss what Michael really contributed to the music world. Rooney also discusses being an ally of Michael during his time at Sony, and how Jackson told Corey that he would never tour again because it would kill him, besides many other things. The forthcoming interview is a view of the life of Michael Jackson that you won't get anywhere else from two men who have worked with everyone in the industry.
He has worked with everybody from Jennifer Lopez to Mary J. Blige to Destiny's Child. He is a producer and a former senior Sony executive. Corey Rooney, thank you for joining me today. And also I have with you a former Sony executive and co-owner of Triangle Management, Chris Apostle. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here this evening. I really appreciate it. And I want to start off by saying, first off, I'm Corey. You had a chance to work with Michael. You wrote and produced some songs with him. What was your relationship like with him?
It's funny. Someone asked me this the other day, and I said, I waited all my life and my career pretty much to finally get a chance to work with Michael, to be recognized, to have my talent recognized by Michael. And, when it came time finally for us to get in the studio, we spent more time, we spent almost a month of just talking, and he was educating me on, so many different things. I mean, we barely got a lot of music done. It was a completely different experience than what I thought it was going to be.
Kind of like almost an utter distraction, not getting work done and just talking about a bunch of other things.
Yeah, and then the relationship quickly turned into me being an executive at the time. I think I felt like my strength for him at the time was more so than being a writer or producer for him, but to be his inside man at the time, because it was weird. He felt like at the time at Sony that he didn't really have any allies or anyone that was going to be in his corner.
Really?
It was amazing, yeah. So I quickly became his number one ally at the company.
Mm-hmm. And so what did you learn from him, in that time that you became his ally, like who he was? And it just seems like there were just always people trying to leech off of him and telling him to do one thing or another, and it seemed like he didn't have a lot, at some points, control of his life. Am I right?
Yeah. I mean, that's that you hit it on the head. I mean, it was to the point. The first thing I started to learn about him was that he's always so eager to please. He was so eager to please that he kind of overthought a lot of things. It's like he would have an album done, and I would listen to all this music and say, Michael, this is unbelievable. Yeah, but I don't think it's ready yet. Because he's got a million people in his ear telling him different things in different directions, and he was easily led in all sorts of directions by people, and I was amazed by the fact that he was so easily led.
Yeah, Chris, I have to say, for more than a decade there, you were a major player at Sony Music Entertainment. What were your dealings with Michael, and what did you learn about him while he was with, obviously, Sony?
Well, my dealings, unlike Corey, were very limited. The actual time I spent with him was just a couple of days. He was doing a mix of a track with Jay-Z, and Jay-Z had already become quite a player in the business. And I just remember walking in the studio before Michael had gotten there, and Jay-Z was working on lyrics for what he was going to do. And I just remember that Jay-Z I never saw him so humble. And he was almost like a little bit nervously excited that he was working with Michael Jackson, and that left a lasting impression to me. I mean, I'm older than Corey, and I've grown up with Michael, since he began. But the thing that I learned on the inside from the Sony side was most people, the executives, like Corey was saying, giving him direction, all these ideas, what he should do and shouldn't do. The thing that I think was most forgotten about Michael and what he did was Michael was always working on music. You hear all the other stuff going on and everything, but it's funny, you watch like a recent interview, that Martin Bashir thing, and Martin was saying, well, it's good that you're working on music again, and it was extremely poignant to me when Michael said, I've always been working on music. I mean, what do you think, Corey? He probably has a couple hundred tracks finished sitting in the tank somewhere.
there was a news report that I wrote in an article the other day that he has 200 unpublished songs that are left to his children that they can profit off, and it's valued at somewhere near $60 million, for example, Chris.
Right.
You
and I believe that was kind of like the old Motown way. Stevie Wonder has over 2,000 songs that he's stored and and put away for the same purpose. And true, Michael was always working on music, always working on music. But like I said, he was never really satisfied with himself.
Well, I have to ask you both. We'll start with Corey, and then we'll go to Chris. I mean, the comments he made about Tommy Mottola, many years ago, the comments he wasn't happy, even though the album he had released back in 2002, there was $30 million put behind it. But were you surprised when he made those very, candid comments calling, Tommy Mottola a bunch of different things? Surprised, not surprised?
I was not surprised. Like I said, he didn't really feel like he had a lot of people in his corner at the record company, and for the most part, he I don't think people really showed him the love and respect that they should have been showing him at the record company. And true, they may have spent $30 million on the record, but at the same time, the business affairs on that record was set up to the point where Michael couldn't win if he wanted to win. You understand? I mean, they set it up and they put such a high marker on the record, in terms of his recoupment and things like that, that it was like kind of a lose-lose situation.
Mm-hmm.
And they did that to dangle a carrot to say, okay, well, we want you to do the full thing. We want you to sell records. We want you to tour. We want you to... They thought that he was going to go running after the carrot saying, man, I got to do all of this so that I can recoup.
Yeah. Chris, thoughts?
Well, a powerful artist like Michael, he's not the first artist that has ever decided, when he's not comfortable at his home, i.e. the label, to sit there and decide that he's going to take some shots and say his piece. When artists at his level aren't comfortable, they say things. And someone like him, who only dealt with the top level, Japan and Mottola and stuff like that, he came out and he said his thing. And I'm sure the frustration level was out of control. I mean, there's a lot of circumstances that pushed him to that point. A thing that I'm still brutally offended about, and it's only a rumor, but it's something that I really believe, is I really think that he got blackmailed in that whole scandal thing. And I think at some point the truth will come out. This man gave people millions and millions of dollars. His philanthropic stuff never comes out, what he did. And I think his reactions were natural. And I'm sure he was getting pushed. I mean, if you look at the quality of his work, Chris, go back to Off the Wall, which is my favorite Michael Jackson record. But every single record, I don't care, you go to Dangerous, any single one, these records are perfect. Blue Book standard records, nothing but hits. Corey and I sat in an office in Sony once and watched a concert, a live DVD. A colleague of ours, Ron Grant, called us in and said, you guys want to watch something? And it was, and we're figuring, all right, middle of the day, we'll watch something for 5-10 minutes. It was unedited, 2.5 hours from a stadium in Brazil. He never stopped working for 2.5 hours. The point that I would love to make about him is that he's not getting enough play for what he has contributed to the world musically. He is probably, arguably, the greatest musician we'll ever see in our lifetime. You'll never see anything like this again. That has to be discussed and mentioned.
So, the question to both of you, Corey, first on this is then how will the music industry be affected going forward now?
I don't really think that the music industry has taken a deep enough look at what Michael Jackson meant to everybody, all of us, artists, producers, actors, actresses, all of us, entertainment as a whole. I don't think that they took a deep enough look because, everyone's too busy with, if I can say it, with their head too far up their own,
Yes.
Their own butt.
Yes.
And I don't think they stopped. When Michael was on trial, nobody stopped to go and support him at the trial. Yep. The guy is acquitted on 10 counts of child molestation or whatever. No one said, sorry, Michael. No one said, Michael, we knew you were innocent. No one did a BET tribute to him then. Nobody played his music and did a marathon then. Nobody rallied up and did a concert. Why should Michael have to go on tour to raise money? How come all the artists didn't band together back then and say, hey, you know what? Let's do a tour like Michael did when he did the We Are the World tour, and let's raise some money. Let's get this thing going. No one did that.